Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Do you know what a sequestration order is?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
So it would be an order to not view any testimony of a trial, is my general understanding.
Does that mean that you can't watch any of it on television?
Correct.
Do you understand whether or not you can speak to attorneys about testimony? Is that precluded as well?
I'm not aware either way.
Has anybody ever spoken to you about any testimony about that occurred in this trial before you testified?
No, they have not.
Have I ever discussed, intimated, or suggested any information whatsoever to you about arguments, testimony, or anything about this case as it's ongoing?
No, you have not.
Do you follow the rules, sir?
Yes, I do.
Have you followed them in this case?
Yes, I have.
When you gave your opinions and you've testified, do you have any information or knowledge about this trial as it actually occurred until the point when you testified?
No, I do not.
You were asked some questions about your CV. A CV is a resume?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you were asked about a LinkedIn account.
Yes, I was.
Is your LinkedIn account different than your CV?
Yes, it is.
And in this case, when did you learn that your LinkedIn account was wrong or had not been updated? When was the first time you learned that?
That was yesterday.
When you started your LinkedIn account, do you remember when it was you set it up?
I do not. It would have been maybe 10 years ago or more.
Do you routinely update your LinkedIn account?
No, I do not.
They said,
When you
hey,
set up
you
your LinkedIn account, the section where it asks for education,
This one.
whether
Dipshit.
graduated or ongoing, do you remember filling out that section?
I don't particularly remember filling it out, but obviously I did at some point.
When you were asked about Apature's website, how many experts are associated with Apeture?
I could give you a rough number between 80 and 100,
How many offices?
15 or so.
Are you involved in the website design or content?
No, I'm not.
Do you know if Apeture gets the information from their website directly from LinkedIn?
I don't know where they get all of their information from.
Did you ever weigh in or develop your information that was on Apeture's website?
No, not on the website.
You do provide CVs before you come to court, don't you?
Yes, I do.
In this case, you were asked by the defense, when you provide your CV, do you understand that it's going to be reviewed by whoever requests it, the Commonwealth of the defense,
Yes, I do.
and that it will be shared with both sides in the court?
Yes.
In fact, the first time you provided a CV in this case, was it October 11, 2014?
Objection, Your Honor.
So the leading nature sustained.
Do you remember the first time you provided a CV in this case?
It would have been around October
What year?
2024. Sorry.
And when you provided that, was it as an exhibit to something?
Yes, if I recall, it was as an exhibit to the initial protocol that I sent out.
And when you submitted that CV, did you appreciate whether or not it would be part of a court filing in public?
Yes, I did.
If I could have exhibit 183, please. (183). You could enlarge the top section. Right there is good. And sir, when you provided this CV to be filed with the court and made public, did you indicate that you had obtained a bachelor degree?
No, I did not.
Why did you put currently pursuing?
Because I am currently pursuing a bachelor's degree.
And did you understand your CV was received by the defense and they knew this?
Yes, I do understand that.
Subsequently, you were asked to provide an updated CV in April 2025.
Yes, I was.
Did you do that?
I did.
Can we have exhibit 184? Did you further appreciate this would be provided to both the court and the defense?
Yes, I did.
Did you represent to the defense that your education included earning a bachelor degree?
No, I did not.
You did in your CV.
You've testified in, you can take that down, please. You've testified in many other cases
Yeah,
have,
and misrepresenting
in
yourself
courts
there
around the
too.
country.
Yes, I have.
And when you testified in other courts around the country, do you know whether there are transcripts of your actual testimony?
Yes, I believe there are.
Have you ever represented in any court that you achieved your bachelor's degree?
No, I have not.
Have you ever inflated your qualifications in a court?
No, I have not.
By
When I asked you
presenting
about
that
some of your
CV as
background,
an
you told us
evidence.
that you had certificates in Celebrite and Axiom. I didn't go through all of the qualifications and all the accomplishments you had, did I?
No, you did not.
Do you have professional certifications, GIAC, Advanced Smartphone Forensic Analysis?
Yes, I do.
Do you have professional certification from CCME, Celebrite Certified Mobile Examiner?
Sustained.
Do you have professional certifications as a Magnet Certified Forensic Examiner?
Sustained for the same reason.
I'm sorry?
Sustained for the same reason.
Do you have a number of certificates that I did not ask you about?
Yes, you did. I
Can you
did,
share
yes.
some of those with us?
Sure. So one of those is going to be GIAC, Advanced Smartphone Forensics. So that's going to be Global Information Assurance certification. And that is basically a 40-hour class or 48-hour class with a test at the end to get that certification. There's also a Celebrite Certified Mobile Examiner certification. That is specifically to, kind of demonstrate your knowledge of the Celebrite software, as well as Magnet Forensics certifications, again, for their software specifically.
Any certifications regarding computer hacking?
What was that last part? Sorry.
Any certifications regarding computer hacking?
No, not currently.
Did you also take any classes regarding crash data or BOSH?
Yes, I have.
What do you have for certificates in that arena?
So those certifications would be Crash Data Retrieval Technician and Crash Data Retrieval Analyst. So those courses would be around acquiring and analyzing crash data from airbag control modules.
Courses.
You mentioned that you had over 700 hours
Yes, I do.
of classes and certification.
Yes, that's of classes and classes and seminars or conferences, specifically in digital forensics or vehicle forensics.
Do you need a bachelor's degree to be competent and achieve in this area?
No, I do not.
Is a bachelor's degree a prerequisite of success in a particular field?
No, it is not.
You ever hear of Bill Gates,
Yes.
Stephen Jobs,
Yes.
Oprah Winfrey?
Oh my God. Are you for real?
You had become engaged in this case in October 2024.
Correct.
And when you first became engaged, you had a chance to look at photographs and some data.
Yes, I did.
At that point, you hadn't had a chance. Had you had a chance to actually inspect any of the physical property?
No, I had not.
Did you have an understanding that somebody else did?
Yes, I did.
Who?
Miss Gaffney and a number of other people with the MSP.
Attended some type of procedure?
Correct.
And do you know who led the actual procedure?
As far as I'm aware, it would have been Miss Gaffney.
The defense expert?
Correct.
You filed a protocol. What was the purpose in October when you first got involved in filing a protocol?
Sure. So the first purpose of the protocol was just to address the fact that we were missing data that we expected, and address a potential solution to gather more data.
Without having looked at the physical property, the actual boards, how did you conclude simply on data and photographs that there was missing data?
Sure. So that would be reviewing the initial data that was provided, and not seeing user data like I would expect. And that's because there's a number of different chips that are on a circuit board for an infotainment or a telematics or any other module. And there's a number of different data bearing chips. The purpose
Are they megabyte or megabit chips?
of those chips will vary. Some chips main purpose is to store user data. Some chips main purpose is to store software or firmware. So if you're gathering, acquiring data from chips that only have software and firmware, then you would not expect or you would not see user data within those chips.
When you made that analysis and concluded that there was missing data, had there been any report provided by Ms. Gaffney suggesting there was missing data?
No, there was not.
Had there been any analysis or opinion alerting that there was missing data?
No, there was not.
Was there anything to indicate that the person who did this test missed data at that point?
No, not at that point.
When you decided to write a protocol so you could actually look at the boards and do an analysis, did you put that protocol in writing?
Yes, I did.
And do you remember if that was around October 10, 2024?
That sounds familiar. Yes.
Now, when you were cross-examined, the attorney asked you if you knew what the word mendacity meant. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you didn't know. Do you now know that means to lie or be untruthful?
Your Honor. Sustained.
He didn't ask you a question. He just asked you if you knew what the word was. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember he also, on cross-examination, suggested that when you had your mistake about megabytes, megabits, it was the defense expert that alerted you to that mistake? Do you remember that suggestion by the defense?
Yes, I do.
Did they ever show you the documents so you could see the chronology?
No, they did not.
You wrote a report on October 10, 2024. Did you then write another report, a supplemental protocol?
Yes. So I did write that initial protocol and then a supplemental protocol.
Was that on October 17th, 2024?
That sounds about right.
When you wrote that a week later, at that point, had you realized your mistake?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Why did
Can
you?
we approach, please?
Yep. You can't justify this, Hank. Sorry. You can't talk your BS out. I know you've been sitting there for a day and a half stewing, chomping at the bit. But pow! You had your chance. You should have reviewed it and doing the sidestep. Have you heard of Oprah Winfrey? She never got on TV and said she had a bachelor's certificate in science or mathematics or any other bullshit. She earned it on her own merits. There was no misrepresentation. Same goes for everyone else you just mentioned, you dipshit.
When you realized your error, what did you do?
So I intended to correct it with a supplemental protocol.
When you corrected it with the supplemental protocol, do you remember what date that was?
Not specifically, I do not.
Okay. If I showed you your report, would that help your memory?
Yes, it would.
May I approach?
Yes.
Please don't read this, just look at it, and if it refreshes your memory, let me know, and then I'll ask you a question.
Yes, it does.
When did you correct your error with the supplemental protocol?
That was on October 17th, 2024.
Okay. And do you remember the date that you first received any information from Mr. DeSorga?
No, I do not
Do you
specifically.
remember the date when Mr. DeSorga's information was first filed?
No, I do not.
And do you know if it was, whether it was after your October 17th supplementary report?
Not specifically, but I believe it was after.
And so when it was suggested that you had to be schooled or advised by Mr. DeSorga, was that accurate?
Objection, Your Honor.
Word it differently. Word it differently.
The claim that was made that you weren't aware until someone advised you of your error, was that true?
No, that was untrue.
When you realized there was an error and you put it in a report, were you ever dissuaded from publicly alerting all the parties of your mistake?
No,
Do you leave stuff in or out of a report if you find it helpful or hurtful to one side?
no, I do not.
Have you, in this effort that you've made in this case, have you always been encouraged to provide all information, regardless of what it is?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
Yes, I have.
And who's encouraged you to always provide all information, regardless of what it
No,
says?
no one. So my job is to assist the jury. So the jury, assisting the jury means presenting all the information.
Have you ever been discouraged by me?
No, I have not.
When you looked at the photographs and you looked at the boards without actually touching them, how long did it take you to figure out that there was some other vehicle for data?
Sure. So it took a few times to look at the photographs before I identified the micro SD card slot.
You were asked whether it's important to be accurate and reliable. Is it in this field?
Yes, it is.
And if data is not found on the chips, is it a standard practice to look elsewhere?
Yes, that would be a standard practice.
Was that done in this case before you became involved?
No, it was not.
Who was the first person to identify where the missing information was?
Myself.
What happens if you miss information because you don't see it?
So if you miss information, that's information that won't help in the analysis.
In this case, the information on the SD card that you found, how important was that to this entire analysis?
It was important to timestamp certain events.
Without that information in the SD card, would you have been able to so accurately timestamp certain events?
No, not so accurately.
Before you were involved, was that information, that very important information for timestamps, was that available for either side?
No, it was not.
Is it now?
It is.
You were asked about Burla. When Burla did not have updated software to simply plug into a car and download the information, what process would have to be used?
Sure. So best practice for vehicle forensics is if the module or a vehicle is not supported by a forensic tool, would be to remove that module, or let me start over, manually document the screens on that infotainment module if it's available and it can be powered up. But then also going through disassembling the module, identifying any type of chips or SD cards that may hold data, and acquiring that data.
Is that called a chip-off process?
It is called a chip-off process.
Does it describe the process well, chip-off?
Yes, it does.
Since Ms. Gaffney did the original analysis and did that chip-off, has the software updated?
Yes.
And is that the Burla software?
No, I'm sorry. So she has not done a updated analysis with the Burla software.
But has the Burla software itself updated?
So the Burla software itself has updated, but it is limited to, again, plugging in a USB into the infotainment module while it's in the car running.
Does the updates in Burla software have anything to do with the SD card?
No, it does not.
Why not?
Because, again, they're going a different route to acquire data, and they are acquiring a limited amount of data through what's called diagnostic logs. So if you think of diagnostic logs, your radio unit is keeping logs of any time things happen on the radio for manufacturer purposes. So Burla is taking those logs and they can interpret some of those logs. They are not, acquiring all the data that is on the SD card itself.
You have drafted a number of reports in this case.
I have, yes.
Regarding the chip-off process, did Ms. Gaffney ever write a report?
No, not that I'm aware of.
When you wrote reports in this case, do you expect for them to be shared?
Yes, I do.
When other experts, like, for example, Mr. DeSorga writes a report, do you expect to have a copy and review it?
Yes.
Your Honor.
Sustained.
What is the standard practice when there are reports from different experts regarding the same subject matter?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Is there a standard practice
Sure.
regarding reviewing reports from similar experts in similar subject matter?
Sure. So anytime a report is written by an expert, that report would be provided and shared with opposing experts.
Reports, do they always come at the same time in a case?
No, they do not.
When you wrote your reports, how would you provide them so they can be disseminated?
Sure. So that I would typically provide them to the client or the attorney that hired me, and then that would be disseminated from there.
Did you have an opportunity to receive Mr. DeSorga's March 5th, 2025 PowerPoint?
Yes, I did.
Were you provided that by me, the Commonwealth?
Yes, I was.
And were you asked or given any direction on what you could or should do?
No, I was not.
Were you ever asked to reach any particular result?
No, I was not.
Were you ever asked to avoid anything?
No, I was not.
What did you see your role as when you receive a report from another expert like Mr. DeSorga?
Sure. So when I receive a report, I would typically review it and then make a decision if it's better to address any issues in that report through testimony or address those with a supplemental report.
And in that analysis, do you follow your own discretion or do you follow directions of the client?
No, I would follow my own discretion.
Did you ever receive any direction on what you should and shouldn't do regarding considering Mr. DeSorga's report?
No, I did not.
When you looked at Mr. DeSorga's report, did you have concerns about his report?
I did. Yes.
I want to talk about his report in detail. Before we get there, share with us what your general concerns were about Mr. DeSorga's report when you reviewed the whole report.
Sure. So what Mr. DeSorga does is take a couple different adjustment methods to attempt to adjust the clock from the Lexus with the iPhone. But what he does is takes a lot of methods or data points that are not applicable to the time that we're interested in.
What do you mean? Can you explain with a little more specificity what he does?
Sure. So if you think about it, your clock is constantly, changing as far as it syncs up with other GPS satellites or network time servers, and it's updating constantly. So a clock variance between two devices may be different at, say, 12 o'clock in the day versus 1 o'clock in the day. So best practice is to choose an event that is nearest to your time in question, so you have the most appropriate adjustment for that clock variance.
Mr. DeSorga's analysis, did he choose the event most closely tied to the backing up event?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The backing up event, are you familiar with that time frame?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Was Mr. DeSorga's analysis based on information most closely related to that event?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What information did Mr. DeSorga choose to use for that analysis relative to the backing up event?
Sure. So he chose a couple things. That's going to be call logs that happened on both devices or that was recorded on both devices, as well as a GPS data point, which was incorrectly identified as being near that or encompassing that 3-point turn. So what we did is did a more thorough analysis of that 3-point turn event when it occurred within the iPhone data, and then compared that and adjusted with the Lexus.
Explain to us your concern about using call logs.
Sure. So there's a number of call logs that you saw earlier that were recorded by the phone and the Lexus. The one thing you'll notice, and it's hard to kind of go back to it without the graph, but the calls that happened between 1 and 5 o'clock that morning actually happened when the car was powered off. We know that based on the power on and power off events. So those timestamps that are recorded with that 2-second and 1-second offset is actually from Mrs. Reed's iPhone as she gets back in the vehicle and her phone connects up and syncs back up. So the 8-second and the 16 or 21-second offset are the only offsets that we have to compare to calls.
Was that a concern?
It was a concern.
Why?
Because if you're using the 1 and 2-second offsets, that could be misleading because it's not actually comparing the Lexus clock with the iPhone clock from Mr. O'Keefe.
What's it doing?
It's comparing the Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone clock with Mrs. Reed's iPhone clock.
What other concerns?
Sure. So the other concern was a GPS point known as GPS 154, which if you remember yesterday, we talked about it a little bit. So that was misidentified as being the end or towards the end of that 3-point turn. But when we look closer at all the location data, we can see that that actually occurs between 12:23:59 and I believe it was 12:24:07.
Let me ask you some questions about what compelled you to look at the 3-point turn and synchronize the clocks. Were you aware of Mr. Whiffin's report where he offered that the last user interaction on Mr. Whiffin's phone was 12:32:09?
Objection, Your Honor.
You were asked, did you consider Mr. Whiffin's report where there was a last user interaction of 12:32:09 by the user?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
You were asked if you considered that. Did you know that information?
I did know that information was available and existed, but I did not use that in my analysis for the clock synchronization.
Did that have any part of your motivation to do the clock synchronization?
No, it did not.
Were you attempting to match the synchronization with any of this other information that exists in data?
No, I was not.
You were also asked if you were aware of Mr. O'Keefe's phone that at 12:32:16, it ended its movement.
Yes, I was aware of that. Yes.
Did that in any way affect your interest or your decision to synchronize the clocks?
No, it did not. So my primary focus and to adjust the clocks was because I thought the PowerPoint slides by Mr. DeSogra were misleading.
When you were shown Exhibit 190, can we have 190, please? You were shown this chart. Was this the entirety of Mr. DeSoga's report?
No, it was not.
Was there text information offered by Mr. DeSoga to give his position or explanation of this?
Yes, there was.
Is that included in this exhibit?
No, it's not.
Did you get a chance to read Mr. DeSoga's report, including the actual text explaining his analysis and process leading to this chart?
Yes, I was.
Did you look at Mr. DeSoga's entire report?
Yes, I did.
I move to introduce Mr. DeSoga's report.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so this was triple D for identification. That would be the next exhibit.
Exhibit 191.
You said as a result of Mr. DeSoga's report, you were concerned, so that compelled you to do your analysis that resulted in your May 8th report.
Correct.
I want you to take us through Mr. DeSoga's report and explain to the jury what concerns you about his analysis.
Sure.
With the court's permission, I'd like to put this page 1 of this report. Is this the front cover of Mr. DeSoga's March 5th, 2025 report?
Yes, it is.
Turn to page 2, please. What do you recognize this slide or photograph coming from?
Sure. So this slide is coming from Dr. Welcher's overall PowerPoint slides.
When you first saw this slide, where did you first see, which source did you first see this through?
Through Mr. DeSogra's PowerPoint.
Well, Dr. Welcher works at Apeture, doesn't he?
He does, yes.
Did you know he was working on this case?
Yes, I did.
Was he providing you his PowerPoint or slides before this point?
No, he was not.
When you first saw this slide, did you see information about the timing of the tech stream event, which was the backing maneuver?
Yes, I did.
At what time did that show?
Can we blow it up just so I don't get the time
Please.
wrong?
Up, please. I'm sorry. Up. Here we go. Thank you, Ms. Gilman.
Sure. So that's got the tech stream event ending at 12:31:43.
These tech stream events that are captured, do you know how long of the event is captured? How many seconds?
Yes. So approximately 5 seconds before the trigger threshold is met and 5 seconds after.
When this information that you reviewed in Mr. DeSorga's report, do you know what clock is used to identify the 12:31:38 to 12:31:43?
Yes, I do.
And what clock is that?
So that's a combination of the Lexus clock that's coming from the infotainment center, as well as the running timer that we discussed yesterday that's coming from the airbag module itself.
Is the source of that time important?
Yes, it is.
If you compare time from a different clock with time from a different clock and don't synchronize the two, does that lead you to an accurate result?
No, it does not.
When you were answering questions, you repeatedly were saying, according to the Lexus clock. Why were you offering that qualification repeatedly? One moment, please.
Sure.
Why were you offering that qualification repeatedly?
Sure. So to make sure that the jury understood that that timestamp was coming from the Lexus itself and was not an adjusted timestamp to Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone.
Could you scroll down, please, Ms. Gilman? Up a little bit, please. Thank you. The 3209, what did you understand that information to be?
Sure. So that is information I understood to be the last device lock recorded on Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone.
And what clock did you understand that time came from?
That would come from Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone clock.
If you reconciled his iPhone clock information, or if you compared it without reconciling to the Lexus information, what's the danger in doing that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Is there any danger in doing that?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
Is there any danger in comparing two times if you don't consider the clocks that they came from?
Yes, there is. So you could essentially be, inaccurate time for when that event actually occurred.
If you could just scroll down to the bottom so we can see the rest of that. You mentioned the word variance yesterday during your direct examination. I'm going to ask you to look at that box that has the green around it. Is that an example of variance?
Yes, that is an example of variance between, no. So I take that back. That is not an example of variance itself. That is an example of comparing the end of the tech stream event to the device lock event.
Is that attempting to compare two different devices?
So that's attempting to, that's not attempting to compare anything. It's just stating that the time between the device event lock and the end of the tech stream event, unadjusted, is approximately 26 seconds.
Is that accounting for synchronization or not accounting for synchronization?
That is not accounting. That is not with synchronization.
Can we turn to the next page, please? Did you review the next page of Mr. DeSorga's report?
Yes, I did.
And did it lead you to any concerns?
This page specifically, yes and no. So this page, again, is just showing the time difference between the end of the tech stream event and Mr. O'Keefe's last device lock event.
Is this another way of showing the information that was in that green box?
It is. It's another way of showing the information in that green box, but it is not a clock variance or an adjustment.
Could you turn the page, please? When you read this page, is this a opinion or conclusion?
No, it does not.
What is it?
So this is just pointing out that when the 26-second window, which they'll refer as John's interaction window, when that number is positive, then the phone interaction occurs after the end of the tech stream event. When that number is negative, the phone interaction occurs before the end of the tech stream event ends.
Did you have any issue with that slide?
No, not that slide in particular.
Okay, we turn to the next page. Did you have an opportunity to review the next page?
Yes, I did.
And were you in agreement with this page?
I was in agreement with this page, yes.
And what does this tell us?
So this page points out that two clocks are not always in sync. So again, to synchronize those clocks, you would have to have a shared event that occurred on both devices.
If we could have the next page, please. Any chance to make that a tiny bit bigger, Ms. Gilman? Were you in agreement with this page?
No, I was not.
Tell us what concerned you about this page.
Sure. So this page is potentially misleading to the jury, again, by using,
Objection, Your Honor. Strike.
Want to strike that?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what your concerns were.
sure. So my concerns with this, that it was potentially misleading to the jury.
Objection, Your Honor. Strike.
I'm going to allow that. That's his concern.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So that this slide was potentially misleading to the jury because it uses incorrect adjustments to try and adjust the times.
How does it use incorrect adjustments? Explain that to us so it's very basic, please.
Sure. So as we kind of go through the next few slides, you'll see. But essentially what they're doing is, or what is being done, is they're comparing call logs, timestamps from call logs from when the phone was off, suggesting that, again, that the lock event occurs after the end of the text stream event, as well as incorrectly identifying the GPS point when the 3-point turn ends.
Will you better be able to explain that to us with the further slides that come next?
Yes, I believe so.
If we could turn to the next page, please. Okay. Is this just a label of what's to come?
It is.
And can we turn to the next page, please? If we could start, Ms. Gilman, with the top left-hand box, if you could enlarge that for us. Did you review this information in this box?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And before we get to your opinions, what does this information tell you?
Sure. So this is a snapshot from my initial report where I point out that the ignition on happens approximately 3 seconds before the infotainment power on event. So you can see that. I think we're up a little too high on the page.
Like,
Yep. So highlighted in the red. That's based on our testing where we identified that the ignition on, or your finger on the ignition pressing it, and the engine coming on and the vehicle coming on happens 3 seconds before the infotainment system powers on.
you were asked on cross-examination about that 3 seconds between the pressing the button and the infotainment system going on, but you weren't allowed to answer the question whether you considered it or why that was important. So I'm going to give you that opportunity now.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Ask the question.
Okay. Is there significance to that 3 seconds, and did you consider it in your report, in your findings?
Yes, I did.
Share with us.
Sure. So when we make our adjustments based on the event, so in this case, the 3-point turn, what we're looking at is the approximate time frame when that 3-point turn occurred via Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone. And then we're adjusting that for the approximate time that the text stream event and that 3-point turn ends. So as we sync those clocks, we're adjusting not only for the difference in the clocks, but we're also adjusting for this 3-second delay.
Did you accommodate that 3-second delay in your analysis and your conclusions?
Yes, that was included in my analysis.
Now back to the screen. The information there, is that text taken from your actual report?
Yes, it is.
Could we shrink the screen, please? And then the photograph in the bottom left, if we could enlarge that, is that as well from your report?
Yes, that is also from my report.
Did we look at that yesterday on your direct examination?
Yes, I believe so.
And briefly tell us what that depicts?
Sure. So that's during our exemplar testing, where again we've got it rigged with cameras that are recording video and timestamps of interactions we're having with the vehicle, which include powering it on and powering it off.
If you could shrink the screen, and we'll go to the right, Ms. Gilman. What was the import of this screen to you in its entirety?
Sure. So this is not actually a valid way to adjust or synchronize clocks because, again, we're not adjusting based on a shared event. So the ignition on event occurs. It's not recorded by Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone. But again, we are adjusting and including this in our timestamp adjustment.
If we turn to the next page, please. You were asked about the process of synchronization through phone calls or through the 3-point turn data.
Yes, that's correct.
Why did you choose to use the 3-point turn data instead of phone calls?
Sure. So I chose to use the 3-point turn data because it was closer in time to the event that was of interest, as well as it was based not only on the infotainment clock, but it was also based on that running timer. So once we adjust that first event to Mr. O'Keefe's phone, the second event is also based on that running timer, so it would also be adjusted.
Did you have any concerns about using phone calls specifically?
Yes, I did.
And what were they and why?
Sure. So those concerns were related to the phone calls that we could actually compare. And again, some of the phone calls that happened earlier or closer to the event of interest were not actually recorded by the infotainment system
Hello?
itself.
Why is it important to take an event closest to the time of the event you're studying?
Sure. So like I kind of said before.
How are we, Mr. Udham? Have you been paying attention to this witness's testimony? By chance? Just asking.
Clock variants will change between devices as they are constantly syncing back up with reference systems. So a clock difference that you see at 1 o'clock in the day is not going to be the same as you would see at 2 o'clock in the day.
When you chose the 3-point turn, how close to the backing up event was that in time?
I believe it was within 10 minutes or so.
Was that closer in time or further away in time than the phone calls as a method?
That was closer in time than the phone calls. If you think back to the phone calls that we could have compared, those occurred at 5 o'clock in the morning.
We turn to the next page, please. Did you have a chance to review this slide of the PowerPoint?
Yes, I did.
Now you see on the left is a box. Where's that box taken from?
Sure. So that box on the left is taken from my report. That's going to be my initial report.
January 30th, 2025?
That's correct.
Okay. And share with us what you were trying to express in this box.
Sure. So again, this box is
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
Sure.
apologize. Ms. Gilman, is there any chance we could enlarge the box on the left? My apologies. Okay, please proceed.
Sure. So this is a comparison of the calls. So the infotainment call timestamps are on the furthest left column. So again, your infotainment system, when you plug your phone in, is recording
What about
and
yesterday?
synchronizing your calls.
What's yesterday
It's not
afternoon?
great about recording and synchronizing every call. So there's a lot of calls here that we don't have that we know exist based on Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone. So the calls that we do have that were recorded in the infotainment system, we can compare to the timestamps that those are recorded on Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone. So when we do that, there's a couple things we notice is during that 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock and 4:45 time frame, when we look back at the power on and off events, we know the vehicle was not powered on at that time. So the vehicle's off. So those timestamps are not coming from the vehicle. They're coming from Mrs. Reed's iPhone or the defendant's iPhone. And then the times after 5:21, we know the vehicle has been powered up at that point. So those timestamps are coming from the infotainment system itself. So that's why we can actually do a comparison of those timestamps and determine the exact or the approximate clock variance.
When you look at the call timestamps of 1:14:13, 4:38:16, and 4:42:06, and 4:45:12, was the power on or off with the car during those 4 first calls?
Yeah, so with those first 5 calls, the car was powered off. And again, we know that based on the power on and off event. We also know that just by looking at the offset, it's a consistent 1 or 2 seconds. And that's what we typically expect and see between 2 iPhones. That's because iPhones are generally pinging back to Apple servers or GPS towers that are the same. So those times are pretty consistent and pretty accurate.
Was the power on by 5:04:28?
No, not at 5:04:28. It was still powered off.
So those first 5 events, were they reliable for you to use in synchronization?
No, they were not.
You gave us a number of reasons. One, the time distance between the event and because they were phone to phone. Any other reasons why they weren't?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll strike the first part, ask the question.
Besides the reasons you already gave us, are there any other reasons why this would not be a reliable way to synchronize 2 separate devices?
Not besides the point I've made already.
Okay. And if we could zoom back on this. The box on the right, is that from your report? Is that Mr. DeSorga?
That's Mr. DeSogra.
Was there anything about that analysis that concerned you?
Sure. So that analysis is misleading because, again, it's not comparing Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone to the infotainment system. It's actually comparing the defendant's iPhone to Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone.
Is there any acknowledgement anywhere in Mr. DeSorga's report that he appreciated that this was iPhone to iPhone rather than iPhone to infotainment?
No, there's not.
I really don't see the fucking point of this. Like,
Did you ever receive any report from Mr. DeSorga that would alert that he appreciated that this was iPhone to iPhone and not iPhone to infotainment?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't get it.
If we could go to the next slide, please. Is this a similar or different slide?
Sure. So this is a different slide.
Okay. If we can zoom in on the left box, please. Where does that box come from?
Sure. So again, that's coming from the same page of my report, just highlighting the 5:30 phone call. And this is comparing the iPhone from Mr. O'Keefe with the infotainment clock.
At that point, is the power on of the Lexus?
Yes. So at this point, the power is on. So this is a comparison of the infotainment clock with the iPhone clock at that time.
Could you zoom out? That final box that shows the comparison between the defendant's Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone. Do you have any concerns about the accuracy of that information for that time?
No. So I think those times are accurate. But again, that's at 5 o'clock in the morning when we're trying to adjust the clock variance. And it's too far away from the time in question. So if we zoom back in to the box, we can actually see in the data what I'm talking about as far as clock variance will change, with time. So the phone call at 5:21, we see an offset of around 8 seconds between the two devices, between the infotainment system and the iPhone. And then at 5:30, which is only 9 minutes later, we can see that offset has actually increased between 16 and 21.
In capturing this data, were there phone calls between the infotainment system and Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, those last two phone calls were between the infotainment system, or were recorded by the infotainment system with Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone.
How does that happen?
Sure. So that's when the device is connected up to the vehicle and you make a phone call, the call is recorded within the infotainment system and it's recorded with the infotainment system's timestamp.
Could you focus on the right-hand box, please? Did you review the right-hand box?
Yes, I did.
Was that from your report, or is that Mr. DeSorga's opinion?
That's Mr. DeSogris.
Did you have any agreement with that?
Yes, so I do agree with that calculation, but again, that's 5 o'clock in the morning versus when we're really interested in around 12:30.
Can we have the next slide, please? Could we enlarge this? Do you know where this photograph came from?
Yes, so this screenshot came from Dr. Welter's presentation.
When's the first time you saw this screen?
When I saw this presentation.
In Mr. DeSorga's report?
Correct, yes.
Had you seen this before that?
I had not seen this before that.
If we could focus in a little more, especially the bottom left-hand. When you reviewed this, did you feel any need to do further testing?
Yes, I did.
Why?
So what we're looking at,
And
if
what
we
we
zoom back
report?
out, so what that is the 12:23:38
Please
is the
explain.
approximate time that the text stream event occurred. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to compare that to the 3-point turn from Mr. O'Keefe's iPhone. What you'll notice, though, is right here, we've got a circled GPS point. So if we can zoom in there. So this circle here is actually circled GPS point 155, which is after this point, but we'll kind of ignore that. But GPS 154, and it's hard to see, the time is 12:23:58. When we look at that, what we see is that actually that GPS position is recorded before the 3-point turn even starts.
You mentioned 154 begins recording before the 3-point turn starts.
Correct.
Is the end time of the 3-point turn a time before or after that 12:23:58?
Sure. So the end of the 3-point turn logically would be after this point.
At the time you saw the slide, had you broken down point 154?
No, not at the time that I saw this slide.
Could you zoom back out a little bit, please? The information in the right box, is that from you or from Mr. DeSorga?
That is not from me.
And when you read that, did that compel you to want to do anything?
Yes, it did. So again, my initial thought was to address this during testimony. With further review and further thought, I decided it was best to offer a supplemental report. What this is, basically the math I agree with. The point I don't agree with is that GPS 154 is the time towards the end of the 3-point turn. And now reviewing further data, we know that's not true.
The 12:23:58 event on the phone, is that related to the first event, the 3-point turn, or the second event, the backing maneuver?
So that's going to be related to the first event, the 3-point turn.
Was there any other data that was closer in time to the to the backing event that you had access to?
No, not that we had access to.
We turn to the next slide, please. You've seen this part of the report before?
Yes, I have.
Having seen the earlier part of the report, does it help you explain and understand this diagram?
Yes, it does.
Is this your diagram or Mr. DeSorger's?
This is Mr. DeSogris.
Do you agree with this diagram?
No, I do not.
Okay, could you explain to us what this, from your perspective, from your experience, what this chart is trying to suggest?
Sure. So this chart is trying to suggest that the lock event always occurs after the end of the text stream event. And again, that's using inaccurate adjustments to make that conclusion.
I want you to use the pointer, and I want you to take us line by line why you believe that this is inaccurate in trying to conclude the time of those locking adjustments.
Sure. So it's kind of hard to tell. So what we've got is we've actually got two different sections. So we've got the top section, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 events. So that's going to be the GPS event, and those. Let's see. No, that's going to be this. It's hard to say. That's going to be the phone calls and the GPS event that are calculated in this. And it's also done with the 3-second delay as well, adjusted. But what we see is, so this obviously +1 is one of the phone calls that was from the defendant's iPhone time, so not from the infotainment system. So that's a inaccurate comparison. Same thing for the +2, the +1, the +2 again, the +8, the +16, and the +20 are going to be those last two calls. If you'll notice, the very last call, we can't really tell which phone call is the correct one to compare. So we're using both within that same time frame. And that's why we get the 16 or the 21-second variance. But again, that's 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's not appropriate for the time that we were interested in. And then the 20-second variance is coming from that inaccurate GPS position comparison.
Could we enlarge that a little bit, Ms. Gilman? On the 2021, is that plus or minus 21?
So that is -21.
The 20 and 21, is that based on different information than the 1, 2, and 8?
Yes, it is.
And explain again for us, where's the different source of the information?
Sure. So the -20 is coming from that GPS point 154, which we know is not the end of the 3-point turn. It's right before the 3-point turn begins. And the -21 is coming from the last phone call that happens around 5:20, I believe, or 5:30. And again, that's 5 hours after the time of interest.
The -20 and -21, is that suggesting that time should be taken off or put onto Mr. O'Keefe's phone for synchronization?
Sure. So that's suggesting that time should be, I'd have to go back to the other slides. I believe that's either way, it's suggesting that the iPhone lock event occurs +6 or +5 seconds after the end of the text stream event.
Besides not accommodating for the timing of that timestamp at the beginning of the 3-point turn, is there anything else about this that concerns you?
No, just that overall, these numbers can be misleading, again, because they're based on inaccurate adjustments, and could lead, again, the jury to believe that the lock event always happens after the end of the text stream event.
Can we go to the last page of Mr. DeSorger's report? Is this a conclusion offered by Mr. DeSorger?
Yes, it is.
Did you agree with that?
No, I did not.
Why not?
So based on those inaccurate adjustments, this slide is again kind of misleading in the fact that it states there's always interaction with Mr. O'Keefe's phone after the end of the text stream event.
You can take that down and turn that off, please, for a moment. After reviewing this report, you told us you then engaged in further study for synchronization.
Yes, I did.
Did you call me on May 7th?
Yes.
Okay. And what were you told to do about a report?
On May 7th?
Yes.
Sure. So that was finish the report and submit it.
Did you?
I did.
When did you submit it?
May 8th.
And do you know that it was provided to the defense by email on May 8th? Do you know if it was provided to the defense?
Yes, I know it was provided. I don't know when.
Now, if we could have Mr. Burgess's PowerPoint, we can go back to page 38, please. After you explain to us,
Objection, Your Honor. Can we close, please, on scope six?
Mm-hmm. Oh, La 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 la. La la lonely fan. Come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on, chameleon. Don't ask me why Boy George just jumped into my head. We come and go. Oh. Right. So there's